Good morning. Well, today we're in the New Forest. I'm visiting my brother for a few days and he's out on his e-bike and I'm out on my e-assist Ribble. We're exploring the trails and the tracks in the New Forest. It's beautiful. I rode here once before with him, but we obviously didn't do a very good plan of the route. We ended up on a lot of main roads. It was pretty busy. In today's video we're going to do a review of an item that I honestly have to say I didn't even know anything about. But subscriber Alistair Comfort came on and said, I have a Redshift stem and you really should have a look at it. He explained a bit about it. Why don't you have a look, see if you can review it. So that afternoon I fired off an email to Redshift in the States, and you know, by the next morning I had a reply from one of the owners, Eric, who said, yeah, absolutely, we'd be glad of you to have a look at our stem, but equally, what do you know about our seat post? Because maybe you'd like to look at that as well. Just over a week later, these items arrived. Now, I don't do unboxing videos, but I did take a couple of shots of the packaging because I thought it was quite impressive. So this is the stem. I've got it now fitted onto the Ribble gravel bike for today's test. And effectively, the stem is suspended, so it can move. The suspension is provided not by a spring, it's provided by elastomer blocks, and they provide various different strengths of blocks so that you can mix and match and come up with the right amount of suspension that you require. And this is the seat post. Inside there's a large spring and that provides the suspension element. You can run it with the single spring, or if you're a bit heavier or you want it a bit firmer, there's another spring you can add. They even tell me that if you want it firmer still, they can supply an extra spring if you need it. I have suspension on the front of my hardtail mountain bike, and if I wanted to do anything fairly severe off-road, I'd obviously be using that. But I started to realise, of course, there is a bit of a gap, because when you start to use a gravel bike, there is a temptation to go onto some of the rougher routes, and all you've got for suspension to damp out any vibration and the big bumps are the tyres. Now, it just so happens I changed the tyres on the Ribble for some Continental Contact Plus. Now, they've apparently got more grip than the Marathons, which is something I didn't like about the Marathons. But the downside is there's always a trade-off, and the trade-off is that they're quite a hard tyre. And even at the lowest pressure suggested, it was really quite bumpy. So in actual fact, the Redshift products arrived at the right time for me. First thing I did is mount them up on the road bike. I wanted to give them a good test and see if they did any good on the road. I'll tell you the conclusion shortly. But for today's ride, as I've said, we're in the New Forest, we're on some tracks, they're mixed gravel, we're on hard surfaces, a few tree roots, that sort of thing. And I have to say, certainly the seat post I'm finding remarkable. It makes the ride so much smoother, and you can actually feel on some of the bigger bumps where it's damping it out. One of my concerns is that there would be some bouncing of the saddle when I'm climbing a hill. Now, I always climb in the saddle. I very rarely stand up. Find it more efficient sitting down. And I was concerned that I would be losing energy putting bounce into the saddle. Now, that's an issue sometimes with mountain bikes, unless you can lock out the suspension, that is. But by adjusting the spring action in the seat post, I found I got it just right, so that I've got no bouncing at all when I'm climbing, but I've got the benefits on rough ground of removing that vibration and shock. Before I did my road test of the Shockstop system, I wanted to make sure it was set up properly. I also wanted to try it on my Triban on the road. Now, it just so happened the day after it all arrived, I was meeting a couple of fellow ride leaders. Now, on that day I actually achieved 87 miles, and surprisingly I averaged 14 miles an hour, which for me is pretty fast. It's over that distance anyway. I'm sure I can't lay the improvement at the door of the Shockstop system, or can I? Could it be that I was less tired at the end of the ride, therefore kept my average speed up? What was interesting as well is that one of the ride leaders actually already had this system in use. He was a young guy and he was certainly impressed with it, so that just added to my confidence in it. But I'm back in good old Lincolnshire and I've come out today on the Triban, and guess what? I've switched the saddle over. The seat post has a very handy measuring scale, so I know exactly where to place it, and it makes swapping over very easy. Now, changing over the stem is a different kettle of fish. Obviously there's a bit more to it, and I certainly won't be changing this stem over every time I ride. If I was riding anything over 50-60 miles, I would find it worth changing the stem over. The stem is a little more subtle than the saddle in that you don't really see much happening. Now, of course, you don't really want a handlebar that springs up and down. You really want it to be quite stable. I set it to the recommended for my weight, but it felt quite hard, so I did put a bit more spring in it, and I actually rode on my 87-mile ride and it was great. I would say probably a little bit too springy, so when I got back I did something midway and it's absolutely perfect now. You don't really feel any movement, but once you go back to a normal handlebar as I am today, you certainly feel the vibrations again. So it's a case of you don't know what you've got until it's gone. On a rough track here on the Triban, as I've said, I haven't got the suspension stem on, and look at my hands. I don't know if you can see my arms shaking. You don't realise how much good it does until you haven't got it. I mean, this is incredible. This could well be why I'm having the arm problem. If you look at other reviews for the Redshift Shockstop system, they'll always talk about the weight. Now clearly there is more weight in this system. It's bound to be. There's more to it and it's giving you more. But what most fail to do is actually talk about the difference in weight, which I'm going to do now. You've got to take out of the equation the existing seat post and the existing stem. So for example, my stem weight difference is only 118 grams. My seat post difference is 254 grams. So totaling 372 grams, that's less than half a litre of water that you're carrying. And frankly, if I was worried about weight, I think I'd rather lose weight in some other areas. Probably lose weight myself. I won't talk about price because it will vary country by country, I guess. But what I will say, it's not cheap. And when you consider the design that's gone into this thing, and you consider the pedigree of the 4 engineers that have designed it, I believe that it represents good value. Now, as is the case, I'll probably have to decide which of these I buy first. I don't think I can justify buying both at the same time. But if I had to choose one first, it would definitely be the seat post. I think that is the one that's given me the most obvious benefit. However, after riding the Triban today without the suspension in the stem, I'm really noticing that that's missing. So I'd have to get the stem pretty soon afterwards. I have been suffering recently with a rotator cuff injury to my arm. Don't know how I did it. It's probably just old age. Might be a bit of arthritis in there for all I know. What I have noticed is that cycling longish distances has exacerbated the problem. It's certainly been a little sorer afterwards. I can honestly say that with the suspension stem, it's been less of a problem. And in fact, if anything, it's eased it somehow. A good thing is that you can order this direct from Redshift Sports and they'll give you free delivery. I'm pretty sure it's anywhere in the world, but check their website first. There'll be no customs to pay at your end, that's all dealt with. Although you're ordering it from the States, they do ship it locally, so just check first before in your particular country to make sure though. Now, I'll make it clear these items haven't been given to me. I'm under no obligation to give a good review, and I certainly wouldn't do that anyway, even if they had been given to me. No, they're going to go back once the review is finished. But what I would say is these are certainly going on my Christmas list. Those of you that know me know that I don't like spending money, but these are a must-have as far as I'm concerned. They've made such a difference to my cycling, especially when I'm on the rough stuff. So I would certainly recommend this wholeheartedly. Well, I hope that was of interest. I certainly enjoyed making it, and it's great to discover a new product. So I thank Alistair for recommending it, and if any of you do buy it, just let me know how you get on. So until I see you next time, bye for now and safe riding. Ah, get stung. Oh, hell.